Right now, we're gonna, it's right now live, and we're gonna just take you right where the action is of the confirmation of Jonathan Berry, Mr. Sunday Law, who wants to enforce Sunday laws. The question is, will God stop it? We'll see. We'll just take you in right where the action is going on.
Recovering an office. They haven't indicated any kind of follow-up in terms of what workers in New Hampshire are supposed to do to make sure that their wages and hours are protected and that their rights are protected. And I would look forward to working with you on that. Representative Esposito, earlier this year, President Trump illegally fired the Department of Labor's Inspector General, along with several other inspectors general. Again, another example of the president not following the law. Do you support the firing of inspectors general without the president first providing the required statutory notice to Congress?
Well, thank you very much for the question, Senator. I believe, I'm not an attorney, but I believe that a court recently upheld President Trump's decision to fire the inspector generals.
Do you support his doing it without providing the required statutory notice to Congress?
I support that the American people elected President Trump to lead this country, and if President Trump decided, if I was confirmed, to dismiss me, I would understand.
Talk to me about your understanding of the role of Inspector General and the importance of independence from political influence, because that answer, the notion that you work for the president and not the American people, in an Inspector General's role is a concerning answer, because there are Inspectors General who have worked for multiple administrations, finding fault in multiple administrations of both political parties, and that's the whole point. They're supposed to be independent. So talk to me about your understanding of the role.
Well, thank you, Senator. I'm well aware of the role of the Inspector General, and just as I have in my entire career, I plan on, if confirmed, leading the Inspector General's office without fear or favor. I plan on, just as I did as a decorated New York City detective, working under multiple administrations between Mayor Bloomberg and then Mayor de Blasio, who single-handedly tried to destroy New York City. I still went out there and did my job regardless of who the leader is.
Well,
I will continue to work independently, just as I have, to do the work of the Inspector General, and that is to rid the Department of Labor of waste, fraud, and abuse.
Will you commit to continuing any open investigations that were initiated by the last Inspector General?
I can't answer that question until I see what the investigations are.
That is also concerning. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Wow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Lucas, you are already cracking down on employers who discriminate against American workers in order to hire illegal immigrants as workers instead. Can you give us some examples of these anti-American national origin discrimination cases that you're working on?
Thank you so much. Well, I can't talk about confidential matters. I can talk about press matters that are public. Since 2019, the Commission has recovered almost $7 million for American workers, as recently as a $1.4 million recovery during my tenure as acting chair. And these often will entail a preference for a foreign worker at the expense of an American worker. The victims that we're recovering for are often a broad multiracial group. So we've recovered money for Black, white, and Asian workers. The fact patterns vary. A common pattern that we will see is an Hispanic preference, and it may occur in a warehouse, an agricultural business. And to be clear, the employers are often victimizing the workers that they prefer as well. They view that that the worker may be less educated about their employment rights or more vulnerable to abuse, and therefore they prefer them over the American-born or local workforce. But regardless of their motives, it's still unlawful. So we've really had a lot of success in that space, and I think we have a significant caseload to support more of that.
On that note, the EEOC has been bringing national origin discrimination cases for years to protect groups of workers. And as you said, whether they are Black, white, Asian, or another race, your predecessors rarely spoke up about what they all had in common, which is that they're American citizens. Can you walk me through some of the trends that you're seeing on that front in cases like those, and what motivates that discrimination?
Yeah, it can be found in almost every industry. How it plays out varies. I think that when you look at warehouse businesses, agricultural, manufacturing, it is often Hispanic preference, but sometimes it is another preference for foreign workers. Either way, it is often motivated either by racial bias, the assumption that a particular racial group that you're bringing in of an immigrant will be more motivated than the local white or Black workforce, and sometimes it's motivated by economic arbitrage, the sense that you'll be able to pay them less because at any point you could deport them. We've seen everything from, again, Hispanic worker preference to importing workers from the Philippines that they can, on visas, that they can, at the moment's notice, get deported, revoke their visa, or move them all over the country. We also have seen it in the tech industry in particular with preference for H-1B visa workers at the expense of, again, local workers. So it can come up in both high skilled workforces as well as your frontline manufacturing jobs. It can also come up in terms of company towns where instead of employing hardworking Appalachian workers that are in your local communities, you are, again, importing foreign workers, decimating those towns and creating kind of a captive workforce again. It's a serious problem.
I recently introduced the Restoring Biological Truth to the Workplace Act to protect workers' rights to use single-sex bathrooms and shield them from retaliation by employers when they say things like there are two sexes, male and female, which is common sense. How did the Biden EEOC encourage that type of discrimination, and how are you combating it?
I think this is a place where the Biden administration absolutely weaponized the EEOC. I think the agency has done a lot of bipartisan work in many other areas, but in gender identity, there's a tremendous amount to roll back. The agency exceeded its authority by passing a harassment guidance, which I dissented to, taking the position that essentially abolishing single-sex spaces and preventing individuals from being able to use biologically real pronouns and declaring that that would be harassment. The agency, however, does not have substantive rulemaking authority. We don't have the ability to create rules. That's Congress's rule in Title VII. And my dissent, I think, was recently vindicated. A federal court vacated those portions of the harassment guidance. And we've noted that vacatur accordingly. I won't be able to formally roll back that guidance until we have a quorum. Should I have the privilege of being reconfirmed? Should we have the privilege of having an additional commissioner on the commission? But I am committed to doing that. Wherever I can lawfully comply with the executive order on defending women, I've done so. I think some of it is simply the tone of the top, making clear that it is okay to say basic biological reality. There are men and there are women, full stop.
And you agree Congress needs to do its job and make those protections permanent. The ruling could be simply overturned by the next administration.
That's right.
Thank you. I yield back.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Lucas, I would like to start with you.
Your response to an earlier question made it sound like you don't believe that the EEOC is an independent agency. I just want to confirm your position on this.
That's correct. The EEOC is not an independent agency. And in fact, every single one of the former Democrat members that were terminated by President Trump, they know that. They know that, and so do colleagues across the decades. Since the 1970s, the EEOC's Office of Legal Counsel, as well as the Department of Justice's Legal Counsel, has held that we are an executive branch agency. In fact, to rule otherwise or to conclude otherwise would make us unconstitutional because we accepted jurisdiction over the ADEA, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act in the 1970s, and since then, the only way that could be constitutional would be for us to be an executive branch agency. We've accordingly complied with that for decades.
So I just want to ask you, in terms of your own work, has anyone from the White House or elsewhere in the executive branch urged or suggested to you or your staff to dismiss a case, take on a specific case, or decide in a certain way?
Respectfully, Senator, I cannot breach deliberative privilege or attorney-client privilege or Title VII confidentiality, so I'm unable to be responsive to your question.
So you can't say a simple no on that?
To answer your question would require me to breach the privileges.
Well, I guess maybe I'll frame it in a different way. Would that be appropriate? Would it be appropriate for the White House to tell you to take on a certain case, dismiss a certain case, or to rule in a certain way?
I can't engage in hypotheticals. I can say
Look,
as
it's not a
global
hypothetical
matter,
because you're saying to me that you are not an independent agency. You report to who?
I report to the president.
So if the president gave you a directive, what would you do?
It would depend on what the directive was, but I report to the president.
So you report to the president, you take directive from the president?
I do take directives from the president.
Correct.
Yes.
So if the president issued a directive saying that he wants you to take on, and look, I will just say whoever the president is, because if you go through this term, it could very well be another president, you have to follow that directive.
If the president gives me a lawful directive, which I'm confident that he would do, then I would obey that directive. And I think it is entirely appropriate for the president to direct the enforcement actions of the agency.
So it's
consistent with
entirely
the law.
appropriate for a president to tell you that the president wants you to dismiss a particular case.
Again, the president directed us to comply with the law, and we're doing so.
Is it within the
specifics-
law for you to be able to dismiss a case?
The agency has prosecutorial discretion at all times.
Correct. So I just want to point out the damages and the challenges of what happens if you are moving away from this idea of some independence. The EEOC is founded upon this idea of protecting rights for all Americans, correct?
It is,
The civil rights for all Americans.
yes.
So there comes a problem, though, if your agency does not have credibility as being one derived from a sense of fairness and instead can come at the whim of potential coercive influence or political whim. So I just want to point out to you where I see the faults of what you're saying in terms of EEOC not being an independent agency. I think the American people will lose credibility, lose trust in the EEOC because you have a very particular role. And I wanted to be able to explain to you and the American people what the problem would arise in. You know, the fact that you are saying that the president is your boss, that you take direction from the president, and if the president tells you to dismiss a case or to go after a particular employer or to rule in a particular way, I just find that to be a dangerous place for us and our government and our democracy.
Respectfully, decades, for 30, 40 years, the agency has taken this consistent position. It's done okay in that time, and I'm confident it'll continue to do okay. But I think the American people should be delighted at the idea that President Trump is leading with an amazing vision for civil rights for all Americans, and that should thrill them. That he is, again, as many have said, seeking to restore the golden age of worker and dismantling the identity politics that have been present far too often at the EEOC.
Well, I just want to remind you that, you know, your boss is not the president, your boss is the American people, and that we swear an oath to the Constitution, not to a particular president. And I will hope that you fulfill that oath. With that, I'll yield back.
Senator Hawley. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to the nominees. Thank you all for being here. Mr. Rogers, let me start with you. As you might know, on the 6th of May, I sent a letter to the Secretary, Ms. Chavez de Remer, on a topic that's extremely important to me and to my state, and that's illegal child labor. I relayed to the Secretary whistleblower information that I have received from an employee at Tyson Foods alleging that that individual employee had witnessed underage labor in a Tyson's plant. That same whistleblower also had information regarding other underage employees at other plants, and this is by no means an isolated incident. The New York Times even has done a comprehensive series of stories on underage illegal child labor in various poultry processing plants around the country, including Tyson Food. Now, I'll tell you why it's particularly irksome to me, because Tyson Food unceremonially closed 2 major plants in the state of Missouri after telling our workers and farmers they would remain open. They canceled contracts with our farmers, putting many of them into bankruptcy. They fired all of the workers, sending many of them into destitution. And what we learned instead is that Tyson is happy to hire and use illegal, I mean, hire is the wrong word. They're happy to use illegal child labor in their supply chains. So they're punishing Missourians, they're closing our plants, they're breaking our contracts, but they're hiring illegals and they're using child labor. So let me just ask you, are you familiar, broadly speaking, with these reports as it regards Tyson and other poultry processors?
Senator, I'm generally aware of the reports, but not the particulars that you mentioned.
Well, following my letter to the Secretary, the acting head of the department, the division that you are now nominated to fill, responded to me and said the following: protecting children against illegal child labor is one of the top priorities of the department and the Wage and Hour Division. Wage and Hour investigates every actionable complaint, tip, and referral about child labor violations, takes those allegations very seriously. He went on to say that the Wage and Hour Division is engaged, I'm quoting now, the Wage and Hour Division is engaged in ongoing investigations of Tyson Foods and its contractors under the FLSA. So here's my question for you. Should you be confirmed, will you continue WHD's open investigation of Tyson Food?
Well, Senator, I can't comment without knowing more of the details, but I certainly commit to continue to investigate offensive child labor wherever it may be.
Okay, good. And let me just ask you a little more specifically, what actions would you anticipate taking to ensure that illegal child labor is not possible in this country in the year 2025?
Well, Senator, there's a lot of ways in which the department can focus on continuing to do, as Secretary Chavez de Remer mentioned, to double down on enforcing against oppressive child labor. And one of those ways is to use the resources that we have and to use the data that's available to drive down where those violations are most likely, take tips such as yours, and to move forward as aggressively as possible to make sure that we can eradicate unlawful child labor in this country.
I just want to emphasize to you that this issue is of the highest importance to me. I think it is absolutely unconscionable that we have child labor being used widely by these mega corporations, and I'm particularly incensed that it has happened to the detriment of Missouri workers. I don't like being lied to, and I will tell you that the CEO of Tyson Food has lied to me, and he has lied to the people of my state. And I don't like it being lied to and then having the law broken in front of my face, flouted in front of me. As a former prosecutor, it irritates me, it rankles me, it infuriates me. And I want to see some justice here. I want to see justice for the kids who are being illegally employed. And yeah, I want some justice for the Missouri workers who were tossed out in the cold because Tyson Food has chosen to found its supply chain on illegal labor and child labor. So I just want to underscore for you that this is the highest priority for me. And if you are confirmed, I'll look forward to working with you on it. I can promise you'll hear a lot about it from me.
I look forward to that, Senator.
Great. Mr. Berry, the Biden administration in 2023 rescinded the Trump administration's previous rule on religious exemptions for federal contractors and subcontractors, as I'm sure you're aware of. The effect of that was to strip away protections that ensured that faith-based organizations didn't have to violate their consciences in order to compete for federal contracts. My question is, does DOL plan to reinstate the implementing legal requirements for that previous rule? Will you put back in place the protections?
Senator, religious liberty, including in the practice of business and contracting, is of the utmost importance under the Constitution and my personal views. That will be, I think it's a serious issue that will have to be worked into the department's larger plans for federal contractors. But
Will you advocate for it?
I will absolutely support robust protections for religious liberty.
Good. Well, I see my time's expired, and I never go over my time, Mr. Chairman. That's a joke. I'm sure the other nominees are just devastated I didn't get to ask you questions, so I'll have some more questions for you for the record. Congratulations to all of you. Thanks for your willingness to serve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blunt, Rochester.
Thank you, Chairman Cassidy, and thank you to the nominees for being here. Congressman, I'd like to start with you. You shared that you're a union member and pro-worker rights. Do you support the Davis-Bacon Act?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers, I heard concerns from Delawareans about the Trump administration's commitment to the prevailing wage, and it's critical that we support fair pay for workers. If you are confirmed, will you commit to fully and fairly enforcing the Davis-Bacon Act that requires construction workers to be paid equitably on federal contract construction projects?
Senator, yeah, I would commit to enforcing all of the statutes, including the Davis-Bacon Act, that are within the purview of wage and hour.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Lucas, I want to turn to you. As you know, the EEOC was created as part of the Civil Rights Act in 1964, and a core part of the EEOC's mission is to advance equal opportunity for all. Do you agree with this mission, yes or no?
Absolutely.
And when it comes to protecting workers from harassment, let me ask you this. Do you think verbal and physical abuse in the workplace is wrong?
I do.
I want to kind of zero in a little bit and follow up to my colleagues' questions. On the first, in the beginning in January, the Trump administration issued an executive order attempting basically to erase trans and non-binary people from federal protections. And in the time since, the EEOC, under your leadership, has dismissed 7 lawsuits filed on behalf of trans and non-binary workers who filed these cases because they endured unwanted touching, verbal and physical abuse, and ultimately were either forced to quit or were fired. Not specific to those cases, and following up on what you said about President Trump's vision of civil rights for all people, do you believe trans people are protected under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Basically, are they included, trans and non-binary people, as part of the vision that you said the president has for civil rights?
Thank you for that question, Senator. As I mentioned in response to one of the other senators, Bostock is the binding precedent of the Supreme Court. It should be accorded respect as such, and Bostock did clearly hold that discriminating against someone on the basis of sex included firing an individual who was transgender or based on their sexual orientation.
So, meaning they are part of all people that should be protected?
To the extent that someone has been terminated based on their transgender status, they are protected by Bostock's interpretation of Title VII.
I think, again, part of the concern is that we have seen in reports that under your leadership, the EEOC staff have been instructed to code discrimination charges related to gender identity as meritless, which would all but ensure that these cases won't be resolved. Are these reports accurate?
I respect your question, but unfortunately, I can't speak to our investigative processes that would require me to breach Title VII's confidentiality provisions and deliberative privilege.
You haven't spoken to them, but other employees have. And if this is true, this is a major problem. To carve out any group, including trans people or non-binary individuals, would be antithetical to the mission. So as I look at this record, in just the short time, lawsuits have been dismissed, resources have been erased on your website for LGBTQ plus workers. People have been intimidated, law firms that are perceived as advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And all of this has just been in the short time. And that's without your full authority of being confirmed chair. This causes a lot of concern. I think there are a lot of people in this country that, from day one, the executive order, we talk about being colorblind, but people are feeling erased. And so I hope that if you are confirmed, I urge you to be mindful of your mandate to advance the promises of equal opportunity for every American, not just those that are deemed worthy by this administration. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Murkowski, I think I owe you one there. Appreciate all of your public service. Let me start with you, Mr. Berry. In Colorado, we've got numerous employers who rely on H-2A and H-2B visas. Our strong agricultural economy relies on the H-2A program to make sure that people have fresh, safe food, quality food on their tables. Rocky Ford cantaloupes are known nationwide. Certainly, they're not available nationwide, but Palisade peaches are a rival to any Georgia peach. If Senator Ossoff was here, I would say it out loud. In the same way, our powerhouse outdoor recreational economy relies on the H-2B program to operate our ski areas and a number of different outdoor recreational venues. So as part of Project 2025, you helped write that chapter on labor that called for the elimination of both of these programs. I don't know how we can find the domestic labor to fill these roles. If you ask any farmer, we're offering $22 an hour to people come pick peaches, and we cannot get the labor to do that. Both these programs are not perfect. I'm not saying they couldn't be improved, but they provide a much needed and necessary workforce. And these visa holders contribute to our economy and then return home to their countries. This is not the problem that the president campaigned on. So if confirmed, are you going to push for the end of H visas at the Department of Labor?
Senator, I appreciate the question. My discussion of the topic, as you say in that book chapter, was part of my ongoing attempts at contributing to the policy conversation on these issues. As I know you're aware, my role, if confirmed, as Solicitor of Labor, is not a policymaking role. My role would be one of being one to help enforce the law and to keep the department within its legal bounds to the best of my abilities.
Well, but would you advocate? I mean, that's fine. And if so, if you are going to advocate, what would you suggest to the Secretary? How would you fill these labor gaps?
Well, so, Senator, again, what I would say there is, again, first of all, this is primarily a policy conversation. Secondly, I think we are. I think there are obviously some ongoing conversations in this space, including we're seeing kind of in real time what the labor market effects are as, for example, the Trump administration has been enforcing our immigration laws, and so we're starting to see shifts in those labor markets, which I think need to be studied in order to understand. The last thing I did want to say about the policy proposals was it was not an advocacy for any sort of immediate cessation. These were supposed to be thoughtful, targeted, sort of capped and predictable phase downs over a lengthy period of time, and in the agriculture context, supported specifically by investments in agricultural production improvements and technology that can improve the productivity of American workers, productivity being the thing that allows greater wage growth.
I hear you. Mr. Rogers, in 2023, the Department of Labor leveled a $1.5 million civil penalty against Packer Sanitation Services, one of the largest food and sanitation service providers, after they found children were working with hazardous machines and cleaning dangerous powered equipment. In response to the Packer Sanitation case and additional reports, Senator Padilla and I both pressed the CEOs of 37 major companies who'd been accused of participating in exploitive child labor practices. And we pressed them. Our letter demanded that the companies take immediate steps to cease these practices. Obviously, Senator Hawley has been talking about child labor as well, and I couldn't agree with him more strongly. During the Biden administration, the Wage and Hour Division launched a National Child Labor Strategic Enforcement Initiative to prioritize investigations of the most egregious and exploitive child labor violations. So, Mr. Rogers, if confirmed, what's your plan at Wage and Hour to root out illegal child labor practices?
Thank you, Senator. And as I had responded to a previous question, I think following what the department has already begun, the Secretary has said she intends to double down on enforcement of child labor, and that is something that the Wage and Hour Division is something that will continue to do and use the resources that are available, the data that's available, to continue that important work.
I appreciate that. I'm out of time, but I will have other questions. Trust me, no one you'll all have a chance. I'll submit them in writing. And appreciate, again, your time coming here and your willingness to serve.
Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to all of you for being here today and your willingness to serve. I want to begin my questions to you, Mr. Berry, and I appreciate the discussion that we had in my office. Project labor agreements, as I mentioned to you, prevailing wage, both issues that are important to the labor community in Alaska, and I think really provide incentives for Alaskans to go into the trades. Can you share with the committee your view on PLAs and the prevailing wage?
Absolutely, Senator, and I really appreciate your making the time previously to meet with me. I was very grateful for that. So I'm also thankful for the opportunity to clear up some confusion here, because in my labor chapter in Project 2025, I opted not to take a position. I think it's been common among Republicans and conservatives in particular to be very critical of Davis-Bacon. I chose to take a position of agnosticism and essentially of openness, and in fact was criticized by a dissenting view in that chapter for not taking the opportunity to go after the law. So I would be completely committed to enforcing that law in my relevant part as solicitor.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers, let me ask you, again, when we had an opportunity to talk about the career opportunities that are available in the trades because of good wages, career options that are created by Davis-Bacon. Do you support prevailing wage?
Senator, as we discussed, thank you for that opportunity to have our conversation. I think it's important that the Wage and Hour Division continue to do its enforcement efforts with respect to Davis-Bacon, like all of its other statutes, and it's important to make sure that prevailing wages are being properly calculated and applied in ways that further and enhance the purpose of the Act.
And just then for follow-on, do you support the current method for calculating prevailing wages in a given area of the country?
Yes, it's important to make sure that we are doing those calculations based on appropriate data and that they are doing the work that the statute and Congress intended.
Very good, thank you. Let me turn to you, Mr. Esposito. Thank you for being before the committee. The Inspector General Act of 1978 states that inspectors general should be appointed, quote, without regard to political affiliation, close quote. It creates an expectation of independence and objectivity. So can you share with the committee how you feel an Inspector General ought to approach their job as it pertains to getting involved in partisan activities, and then what mechanisms you would put in place to not only protect you, but your office from real or perceived political pressures, or perhaps the perception of improper political influence?
Well, thank you very much for the question, Senator. And as I mentioned before, I look forward to, if confirmed, leading the Inspector General's Office of the Department of Labor without fear or favor. I've spent my entire adult life as a public servant, most of it being a New York City detective sharing a car with members of my team, different color skin, different political background, certainly different economic backgrounds. My life depended on them, theirs on me. And you got out of the car every day to do the job. It didn't matter who the mayor of the city of New York was. It didn't matter who the police commissioner was. We took an oath, and I take that oath as I would here, and that is to root out waste, fraud, and abuse in the Department of Labor so that, and as I mentioned before, I know that there's been talk of reigning in the golden age of the American worker, and I don't believe that any of us should be perceived as being partisan by wanting to rein in that golden age. That should not be a Democrat or Republican issue. That should be an American issue. And I think the work that we need to do in the Inspector General's office is to make sure that the workforce, in order to receive fair wages, in order to be have safe work conditions, in order to eradicate child trafficking and exploitation in labor, we need to make sure that all those resources are dedicated. And if confirmed, I will, like I mentioned in my opening statement, travel to each of the regional offices and hear from the men and women on the ground to find out what is actually happening, what we can do better. And quite frankly, I think that they need to feel that they're heard and that they're believed in, and that would make it a more efficient and more productive Inspector General's office.
Well, and I appreciate what you've shared at the end. I think it is critically important that it be perceived that within the office, there is no political judgment, there is no political bias, and that people feel that they will be treated and judged fairly in all accounts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kane.
Mr. Chair, and thanks to the witnesses. Congratulations on your nominations. First, Mr. Chair, I want to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record 4 letters from more than 80 organizations opposed to Mr. Berry's nomination and 4 letters from more than 60 organizations opposed to Commissioner Lucas's nomination.
Without objection.
Thank you. Commissioner Lucas, thank you for what you're doing in a situation that's sort of intolerable and that I believe is intolerable, serving as the chairman of a commission that's supposed to, by law, have 5 members and only has 2. And you don't have a quorum, and that's not your fault. But I do think there is fault in that, and I think there's an intentional strategy that I see happening in agencies established by Congress, and many are agencies where there are commissions or committees that are supposed to have a majority membership from the president's party and a minority membership from the party that is not in the White House. And that's to try to create some notion of balance, but also recognize that winning the White House confers the ability to have majority representation on these committees. But what I'm seeing my colleagues do, and the White House as well, is fire Democrats, as 2 were fired on the EEOC, not nominate people to have a quorum, or when they are nominated, not nominate the Democratic members. We have had a series of votes on the floor this week, not with respect to the EEOC, but other organizations like the FTC, where the tradition that has been honored by all Republican presidents and all Democratic presidents of having a full commission with a full quorum, with a majority from the president's party, that has been honored in this body for a very long time. But this year it's not being honored. And we're allowing the possibly illegal firing of members of commissions like the EEOC, and the administration is choosing to forward Republican nominees but not Democratic nominees. And my colleagues, instead of insisting, hey, look, the law is the law, fair is fair, it will be a Republican majority but not a Republican monopoly, are not acting to empower the commission. So you're doing what you can without a quorum, and I know that you've been asked plenty of questions about that, and you've also pointed out there are things that you can't do without a quorum, but that's on Congress or the administration. But I just want to let my colleagues and the greater American public know that these bodies are important. They do important work. I mean, you testify to the importance of your work in your written testimony as somebody who, in your childhood, you had the experience of seeing what it was like to have a parent who was discriminated against. These are agencies that are important, and an intentional effort to kneecap them by keeping them without a quorum or hyper-partisan them by refusing to nominate members of the minority party does a disservice to the important mission of each of these agencies. And I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Again, that's not on you, that's on the president and on this body, which has the power under Article 1 to offer advice and consent on presidential nominations. Mr. Berry, I do have a question for you. I was made aware that during your interview with the Democratic staff of the committee, you stated that women want to work part-time when you were asked about engaging more women in the workforce. And apparently there were follow-up questions, and you sort of said the same thing. How many women in this room work full-time? Raise your hands if you're a woman who works full-time. Okay. I see a number of hands going up among the women in the room. Behind me and here, I'm seeing some over in the other room who are raising their hands. I mean, do you think that like part-time work is sort of more of a woman's thing?
Senator, I appreciate the chance to clarify that. That was in fact not what I said. What I said was that labor market surveys of various types, I was thinking of some recent ones by American Compass in particular, had revealed that a very substantial number of women in the workforce, or excuse me, just women in America, have a stated or revealed preference in favor of a greater amount of part-time or flexible work. That's sort of nothing more, nothing less. This was not a categorical statement about women at all. It was a survey-driven, data-driven observation.
So there are men who want to work part-time and men who want to work full-time, and there are women who want to work part-time and women who want to work full-time, and the opportunities that are available to men and women should be equal, correct?
100%, Senator.
And you would acknowledge, as somebody who's worked in this area professionally, that there are still significant barriers to women in the workplace, correct?
Yes.
Now, that puzzles me, though, because I understand in response to a question from Senator Baldwin earlier, and I might have gotten this wrong too, so you can correct, that you do support eliminating the Department of Labor's Women's Bureau. Is that correct?
So, Senator, what I said was that I support the president's decision in terms of the agenda that he chooses to put forward, but I've not personally advocated for that.
I'm over time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to the witnesses for being here today. I just have a couple of questions. Those questions are for Mrs. Lucas, and I'm really happy to be able to ask a few questions today because in this administration's words, I really believe we need radical transparency when it comes to individuals who will be entrusted with enforcing civil rights protections. Now, your Twitter bio says that you are, and I quote, advancing colorblind equality. But in September of 2023, you voted against authorizing litigation against Tesla for racial discrimination. In that case, the commission alleges, and I realize that 3 of the 5 did eventually vote to advance that case to litigation, but it alleges that since 2015, Black employees at Tesla's Fremont manufacturing plant have routinely endured widespread, ongoing, and I would say egregious racial harassment. So I wonder if you can just tell us about your vote. Why did you vote against remedying this pervasive and unlawful hostile work environment?
Thank you for the question. While I can't answer your question directly because I can't breach confidentiality or deliberative privilege, I can say that I have voted for numerous cases involving egregious racial harassment that has been brought against workers of all races, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic. It doesn't matter who they are. No one should be judged by the color of their skin. I approach each litigation matter that we vote on based on the specific facts before us and the law as it applies. So that is the global way I approach everything. It's inherently
Okay, no, I'm not asking you to breach any privilege here. This was a public vote that was taken. I'm not asking you to comment on the litigation itself. I am just interested in what your own thoughts are that caused you to take that public vote. And I note that you have spoken about some of the other internal decisions, talking about which ones were unanimous, for example. So you have spoken out about some of what happened internally. So I'm not asking about the litigation. I'm asking about, in your own mind, your public vote that you were taking. Can you just explain what you used to make that decision?
Again, respectfully, Senator, I can acknowledge specific votes. I can acknowledge when I've made a dissent public. I can acknowledge if a vote count, but I cannot talk about the deliberative privilege that went into a particular decision to vote in a particular manner on a litigation matter.
I think it's interesting to call it deliberative privilege. I mean, it is what your mindset is regarding the information you heard. And in this case, a federal judge allowed that EEOC case to proceed, saying that the complaint had done more than enough to demonstrate the racial harassment at the plant, and the culture in this Tesla workplace was so hostile and so pervasive that Black workers at the plant were repeatedly being subjected to racial slurs, including the N-word, racist graffitis, cartoons, and even more offensive, nooses that were being hung throughout the factory. And this is one you voted against. And so the reason I'm asking this question is I am concerned about whether, if this doesn't rise to the level of a Title VII Civil Rights Act violation, I just wonder whether you can, explain to me, in your own mind, why didn't this rise to the level of a Title VII violation?
Again, respectfully, every litigation matter consists of presentations by career staff and the internal workings of the commission. I cannot reveal the information that was provided to us, the matters that we concluded, the factors that we bring. All of those things are protected by privilege. I can point to my voting record on behalf of any number of Black workers who I have been proud to vote in support of litigation filed on their behalf, including ones involving nooses, including slurs, including the use of the N-word. I have no bar against any of those fact patterns rising to it, but each case is inherently a fact-dependent, legally dependent matter.
Okay, so two more just quick questions on that then. Is it that you then commit here in this hearing not to deprioritize racial discrimination cases as chair? Is that what you would say? Would you say that you would be able to appropriately use Title VII in all cases of discrimination, including racial discrimination?
I am absolutely committed to combating race discrimination in every single form, and have filed lawsuits and supported lawsuits on behalf of workers of every single race, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. No one should be judged on basis of their skin color.
Okay, thank you. Just one final yes or no. I know that already you've moved the EEOC to dismiss some of its own lawsuits against employers. So then will you commit here today to continuing to litigate this case until its conclusion?
The decision about whether or not to pursue or continue any decision is something that we'll have to assess at each particular moment. I can't commit to continuing any particular case.
Even this very heinous Tesla case, you're saying?
Again, each case it will be fact dependent at the time.
Thank you.
I ask for enter several letters of support for the nominees into the record, and as chairman, I grant that consent. For any senator wishing to ask additional questions, questions for the records will be due at 5 p.m. Friday, June 20th. Thank you again for the nominees for being here. The committee stands adjourned.
Well, it looks like this is going to be a confirmation that's going to take a couple of days, and we're going to be on top of it, and we will let you know. Well, you're probably going to know anyway, but brothers and sisters, nothing has happened yet. It sounds like this is going to be a lengthy process. And as you see, a lot of one of the men said that a lot of letters came in protesting against Jonathan Berry being nominated as the Solicitor of Labor. And I'm sure a lot of those came from Seventh-day Adventists. And brothers and sisters, this is something we just got to keep looking at. The Lord, all right, the Lord definitely has his hand, and he's definitely in control. This is serious, man. And I tell you, yes, the Sunday law is now making its way in darkness, and the leaders are concealing the true issue. See, that's the reason why. Thank you, Sister Smith. That's the reason why I don't believe this thing about him talking about he just won it on a state level. Brothers and sisters, this thing is going to be, state Sunday laws were very draconian. And that lets you know how the big granddaddy of them all is going to take place. So what happens is that Mr. Sunday Law, they've had their first meeting, and of course we know what the chief goal is. The only thing we're concerned about is them closing things on Sunday. And brothers and sisters, let me tell you this right here. We got to get the message out. Now, just want to let everybody know this is what this Catholic guy put out last month, that every Protestant will bend the knee to Our Lady in the end, talking about Mary. Brothers and sisters, the whole world will wonder after the beast. So what happens is the National Sunday Law, which is to be signed by a president of the United States, if not this president, is on the horizon. Today, I guess, is day number 1 of the nomination, and we will keep you updated. And once we get into another one, we're going to continue to warn you. So brothers and sisters, stay tuned. I mean, are they going to have lunch? Are they breaking out for lunch? Or are they breaking out to lunch? All right. Thank you, Sister Johnson. Amen. All right. All right. Now, let me ask you this. Are they breaking for lunch? Somebody said, thank God, it's God. He gives us more time. How much more time is he going to give us? We don't know, but we definitely need to be watching. You know, our job is definitely to watch and pray. And so what happens is that we're going to come back. If they come back after lunch, we will come back on to give you more, but we're going to stay on top of this, because what happens is this right here, brothers and sisters, this thing is coming. Until next time, may God truly and richly bless you.